Well, first of all, again, I want to thank you all for your time to come down here and record our press conference. As you know, these events occurred on February 21st of 2016, so it's a long time coming for yesterday. And when we received the not guilty verdicts on all counts, we were extremely satisfied with the jury's determination. We felt like we had a fair trial. They listened to all the facts and evidence and came to the only conclusion based upon our legal standards, which was not guilty. And today, we're putting that portion of the case behind us, and we're looking forward to receiving some personal justice as a result of pursuing these matters in the court for a civil remedy. So without any further ado, I think I want to turn it over to C.D. Witherspoon, who's been a very passionate activist with regard to matters such as this, which we believe deals with overreaching policing, aggressive policing, and lies and cover-ups. So Mr. C.D. Witherspoon, could you take us up?
Sure. I wanted to take this opportunity just really to thank Attorney J. Wyndal Gordon for continuously being a legal champion on these types of cases in the city of Baltimore, but really throughout the state of Maryland. And I think we also have to applaud this family. This family exhibited an extreme level of strength and courage and determination as it relates to this case. We've got to celebrate Aaron as well, because Aaron had an opportunity to take a plea deal, but as opposed to taking a deal, he fought this thing out with the direction of his very capable and competent attorney. Dad has been out here in these streets in a vigilant way, making sure that we connected the dots, because in some small way, what happened with Aaron yesterday in court, what it does is it speaks to the cases where there have been no justice in Baltimore City whatsoever. Tyrone West, Anthony Anderson, George King, the cases that we still want justice for in some small way, this case speaks to that. So I celebrate the entire family. I celebrate all of the activists, People's Power Assembly, Southern Christian Leadership Conference, all of the groups that were out in the streets to advocate for justice. But I think at the end of the day, Aaron had a moral question to answer, and I think he answered it. And because of the capable leadership of his attorney, we were able to see victory yesterday. So we've got to fight these type of injustices with every fiber of our being, because right is still right and wrong is still wrong.
And I also want to give kudos to the jury. So many times these cases never see a jury to even provide judgment or a decision on the matters. So many times people charged with these crimes are forced into taking pleas, or just feel like they have to take a plea under duress because they're scared of the outcome. Whereas Mr. Winston, even though they gave him a very generous plea, if he had been guilty, he decided that the plea was not worth his time. He'd rather put these issues in front of a jury and develop a record so that the whole world will know the behavior of these officers. And I think we did a lot in exposing these officers and their misconduct and their bad behavior on February 21st of 2016. So next we'll have, yes, Aaron?
Yes.
Aaron, if you'd like to say a few words.
First off, I just want to thank God. I want to thank my family. I want to thank all my supporters, my lawyer. I want to thank Pastor Witherspoon. I just want to say I'm glad we got justice, and everything went in my favor. And that's basically it. I just want to thank God. That's all I can do.
How do you feel about the acquittals yesterday?
I was happy with the decisions, and that's really it.
When the state's attorney offered you the plea deal, that is probation before judgment, you rejected it.
Yes.
Why?
Because I wasn't going to take probation for something I didn't do. It was unlawful. I didn't do anything wrong. So situation was just absurd.
And how has the last couple of months been, knowing that you had at least 26.3 years hanging over your head, hanging in the balance, just dealing with these charges? I mean, what did that do for you?
It was tough. It was tough. Mentally, I couldn't sleep. I couldn't get over the situations and how I was getting treated. It stopped me from work. Couldn't work. It was just a real tough moment in my life.
And tell me about your injuries. How were you affected by your injuries? That is your physical injuries.
Yeah. Yet again, I can't do certain tasks at my job anymore. Sports, I'm not as active. Can't be as active as I once was. It's a big toll. It plays a big toll in my life. It's definitely a big impact.
What was it like laying in the hospital gurney on February 21st, 22nd, and 23rd? Tell us what you were experiencing then.
I can't even tell you what I was experiencing, honestly. I was just hurt to be in the predicament that I was in.
And at least 2 of the officers were in the hospital with you.
Yeah.
How were they treating you when you were laid up in the gurney?
Well, one of the officers, they were disrespecting me, honestly. I felt like I was being disrespected as a citizen, as a taxpaying citizen.
How so?
I was getting verbally abused. Definitely.
What were some of the things they were saying to you that you found to be disrespectful?
Well, I asked Officer Hernandez for an apology because I felt like what he did was wrong, and he just told me to basically get out of here, get lost. He wasn't giving me anything.
But is that the words that he used?
No, that weren't the words that he used.
Did he use any expletives?
Yes.
And with regard to, I guess, waiting on that verdict, what was going through your mind?
Really, I was confident. Honestly, I was pretty confident in the jury's decision and what they were going to make. So, yeah.
And Dad, what has this been like for you?
It's been stressful. It's been stressful. I feel as though my family has been invaded, our privacy. We've had promises that we haven't received or heard from the police commissioner. And I just feel as though a change has had to come in the city because the police department, the Baltimore City Police Department, is one of the police departments that's out of control. They do what they want. I've had a couple of experiences with police since this incident happened. I was issued citations for no reason, and I just think the city's out of control. And I hope this brings some type of view on the city to try to break this gap or the problem that we have with Baltimore City Police Department. Just speaking for Baltimore. We do plan on pressing charges against the officer who did this to my son. My son is an employee of the Port of Baltimore. He's not able to do his job. The arm that was injured, he cannot lift over 3 pounds as of today. It's almost been a year now. So we have over $90,000 worth of medical bills. So it's a lot going on. And the city has not stood up yet. The police commissioner had his press release and said that we will stay in contact with the family. That press release was the last day we heard from the Baltimore City Commissioner. So I feel as though fruit doesn't fall far from the tree. So if the police commissioner makes false promises, you do what he wants to do, why shouldn't his officers do the same? So That's the way I look, and I just want the officers to know that I'm coming at them hard. Thank you.
How did you feel while the jury was deliberating? What was going through your mind?
I was nervous because from the way things are in this city, you don't know which way things are going to turn. So yes, I said my prayers, and I humbled myself a lot. I had a few incidents in the courthouse that they were proven to be wrong, but other than that, yes, I was nervous about this whole thing, but I left it in the Lord's hand.
And Mr. Witherspoon, you've been working with this family a long time. Okay. And you've been addressing these issues of police misconduct. You're well familiar with the Department of Justice's report. This case is consistent with the reported cases from the Department of Justice. And
Yes.
what does it mean to you, for Mr. Winston, to have this acquittal?
I would submit to you that, working on these type of cases for the better part of the last decade, and seeing, quite frankly, most of these cases, 95% of these cases, excluding the recent trials with the officers in the Freddie Gray case, not even getting indictments, And so I think that the citizens of this city, quite frankly, feel that there is no justice when it comes to the Baltimore City Police Department. I think in the wake, in the aftermath, rather, of the acquittals of these 6 officers, this case was paramount. It was very, very important to send a message that there are still some people who are demanding police accountability in Baltimore City and who are willing to fight the good fight of the faith and to go, like Merle Evers said, the last mile of the way to ensure that justice is served in Baltimore City. And as so far as the Justice Department's report is concerned, the only way that we are going to see real police reform in Baltimore City is if we convict officers and if we send them to jail for these type of atrocities. Because what has happened to Aaron is his entire lifestyle has changed as a result of that attack that took place on the premises of Power Plant Live that involved the Baltimore City Police Department as well as the securities Power Plant Live. So again, I think that this family's courage, the legal prowess of the attorney has created a victory for the community, but I also think it's created momentum for us to continue this struggle against police brutality until all of our sons and all of our daughters are safe, not just in Baltimore City, but throughout the country.
And I guess one of my final questions is one that I'm actually interested in. Aaron, when the state was presenting their evidence in the case, and obviously you disagreed with all of it,
Right.
if not the majority of it, how did it feel listening to them tell the jury things that you knew were untrue?
That was a bad moment. Like that's never a good moment to hear lies being told on you. So I was more hurt that they was just sitting there lying in my face, like directly under oath. Lying under oath. And I was just hurt. It's the only word I can use.
Do you feel as, I'm sorry.
Nah, we good.
Do you feel as though Officer Izenimus should remain on the force?
No, sir. No, sir. He should.
Absolutely.
And are you still angry about what happened to you?
Yes, I can say angry would be, yes, I am angry. Yeah.
Attorney Gordon, if I may, the one thing I'd like to interject is that the police commissioner has articulated his commitment to getting rid of bad police officers in lieu of what happened on yesterday. What we'd like to know is exactly what the police commissioner plans to do with those officers that were involved in the brutal beating of Aaron Winston. If he wants to show, and I mean Kevin Davis, if he wants to show his commitment to eradicating the Baltimore City Police Department of bad police officers, we want to know what his plan is to address the poor conduct, the inhumane behavior of these officers.
And this is a challenge to see what he does, to see if he's a man of his word.
Yeah, because we believe that what Aaron went through was nothing short of torture.
That's right.
His arm was pulled directly from the socket. It was broken in 2 additional places. And even though his arm was broken, they still placed him in handcuffs. Walked him from the power plant lab to the central district. He was crying the entire time, complaining about pain in his arm. They contacted the medic, and it wasn't until the medics arrived that they even removed the cuffs from him. And then they got into the ambulance with him, rode with him inside of the ambulance, that is the one responsible for breaking his arm, Officer Hezenimus, rode with him inside of the ambulance, was intimidating him inside of the ambulance. And then when he arrived at the hospital, he happened to come into the care of a very compassionate nurse by the name of Nicolette Kenton, who was very concerned about his injuries, notwithstanding the police officer's very poor behavior. In fact, things had gotten so bad in the hospital with the police officers' harassment of Mr. Winston that the nurse had to ask them to leave. And as a result of that, Aaron was able to receive the care that he was supposed to. 2 days afterwards, after Officer Hezenimus and his supervisors got together, after releasing my client from their custody as he was in the hospital, they charged him with 7 offenses. He was charged with 2 counts of second-degree assault, 2 counts of resisting arrest, obstruction and hindering, failure to obey an officer's orders, and some other related count. All counts were, he was found not guilty of. 3 of the 7 counts that he faced were dismissed after the state presented its case in a motion for judgment of acquittal. 4 of the remaining charges went to the jury, and they came back in just over or just under an hour. So that lets you know how poorly presented the evidence was. And it has nothing to do with the state's attorney's office. They did their job, but they just did not have much to work with. There was a very game and righteous state's attorney prosecuting this case.
That's right.
However, he did not have the facts to work with, and the officers really defeated themselves with their entirely inconsistent testimony. Not out of the 4 witnesses that testified in this case, not one of them told a consistent story. And so I think that's what led to the acquittals. When we presented our case, we were in a very good position. Again, Nurse Nicolette, kudos to her for coming to court and standing up against this police misconduct.
How long was the trial?
The trial lasted 2 days.
And the 4 witnesses, that was on the state side or
Right.
total?
The 4 witnesses were Officer Dressel, Officer Hezenimus, and Officer Andre Davis, and a Brandy Pope, who's the chief of security at Power Plant Line.
And the nurse testified for the defense?
She did. She did.
So are you planning to pursue civil litigation?
Absolutely. Absolutely. These types of incidences need to be aired out, and there needs to be some accountability. The not guilty applied to us, but still the officers are still on the force. They're still patrolling every day, and they're still placing our citizens at risk. There needs to be some public accountability. I don't know what's going on with any internal affairs investigation. We never hear the results of that, and that's another problem with the system. However, we can make things happen on our end by way of a civil lawsuit, and we'll be filing that in the next 30 days.